Do you feel like the IRS has betrayed the trust of the American people?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I think that's why I'm thinking about this in terms of my primary mission is to restore that trust. I think it has to start with a recognition that the trust has been violated, and it has to start with a recognition that we have to get all the facts out.
As of this date, there is no factual evidence that this was a politically motivated review from senior officials at the IRS or at the White House. Is that correct?
I can definitively say within the White House, no, as of today. I cannot say that as of the IRS as a result of the fact that we did not look at that aspect of it.
The acting IRS Commissioner, Danny Werfel, up on Capitol Hill, as well as the IG back up on Capitol Hill answering questions, the first of many hearings this week. This as we get parts of transcripts of IRS agents in the Cincinnati office who testified to the committee chairman, Darrell Issa, in the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. One employee saying about the 2 rogue agents in Cincinnati, that charge by the IG and the administration, quote, "It's impossible. As an agent, we are controlled by many, many people. We have to submit many, many reports, so the chance of 2 agents being rogue doing things like that could never happen." And then asked about that it was originated and contained in Cincinnati, one agent says, quote, "I still hear people saying we were low-level employees, so we were lower than dirt, according to people in D.C. So take it for what it is. They were basically throwing us underneath the bus." Democrats saying that they haven't named anyone in D.C. specifically. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, this obviously deals with the targeting of conservative groups. And today's testimony, what do you think?
I didn't think it added much, frankly. I didn't think Danny Werfel said anything that was unexpected. I mean, you knew he was going to go in there and sort of take the whacks and say all of the right things, and I think he mostly did that. The most interesting thing that we heard came from the IG, who said basically, we didn't really look at the politics in the IRS, which I thought was interesting. And the other interesting thing he said was the continuing use of the caveat, as of today. As of today. Nobody wants to be out on a limb here saying, I can tell you definitively that this didn't happen, that this doesn't reach into the White House, because nobody can tell us definitively that it doesn't reach into the White House and that didn't happen. And, you know, if you take a step back and you look at the big picture, it would be easy, if these were 2 rogue agents, it would be easy to identify where all of this came from. We would have had answers by now, because somebody would say, everybody who is involved in the process would have an interest in getting those answers out. They would say, well, we know where it came from. This agent did it in this way, and this is where it started. This is where it ended. But we don't have those answers. And I think it's pretty significant that, you know, if you look at what you're seeing from Chairman Issa's committee, what you're seeing from the IRS agent that you identified, this is where things get interesting. You've got somebody who's offering personal testimony because he or she was involved and saying, this wasn't us.
Mara, 2 prominent Democrats, one a current senior advisor, another a former senior advisor to President Obama, out this weekend talking about this and where it comes from.
This was not an effort driven by the White House. It would be the dumbest political effort of all time. Okay?
If there was somebody political involved in this, it never would have happened, because it was the stupidest thing you could imagine.
The dumbest thing, the stupidest thing, obviously that was the talking point yesterday.
Well, that was the talking point, and you know, this is what we're waiting to see. Was there somebody either in the campaign or in the White House who either explicitly or implicitly directed this to happen? We don't have evidence of it yet, but as Steve said, this is how an investigation unfolds. You start with the lowest level people, and they're interviewing the Cincinnati agents who say, look, we don't do things on our own. We get advice or guidance, and we have to check with them, and if we're going to develop criteria like Tea Party and search words, we have to check with the technical experts in D.C. and ask them if this is okay. And that's the case that Darrell Issa is trying to compile. We don't know yet if it's going to go all the way to the top, but you know, these things take a while.
Charles.
This is getting really toxic. Is their best defense stupidity? And is it really a defense to say it couldn't have happened because it would have been stupid? But a lot of stupid conspiracies in American and world history. The idea is that the idea of arguing that it's dumb because it would have been stupid is nonsensical. It shows you how afraid they are Look, when you hear the AGC as of today, as he did regarding the White House, you know that this is really serious. The AG himself has said this was not an investigation, it was an audit, which means there are all kinds of questions, the really important ones. Who directed it? What was the motive? Was any politics involved? All of that he hasn't even asked. We aren't even at the beginning here. I mean, it is look, the White House is making a big mistake. It looks as if its strategy is stonewall and have this argument that it was a bunch of rogues in Cincinnati. That is not going to hold. So in the end, they're going to have to change their story again. Every time you change your story, you lose the trust of people who are hearing you. And it's going to have to change. The only question is, how high did it go? I think the way to do it is to give immunity to people like Lois Lerner, and we will learn as you go up the chain.
Steve, the media theme, a popular storyline, was overreach or potential overreach by Republicans. Some of that came directly from an interview that Committee Chairman Darrell Issa did with CNN.
The administration is still their paid liar, their spokesperson, picture behind. He's still making up things about what happens and calling this local rogue. There's no indication. The reason that Lois Lerner tried to take the fifth is not because there's a rogue in Cincinnati. It's because this is a problem that was coordinated in all likelihood right out of Washington headquarters, and we're getting to proving it. We have 18 more transcribed interviews.
And about overreach, you have a tweet from David Plouffe, who you heard from earlier, senior advisor, saying this: strong words from Mr. Grand Theft Auto and suspected arsonist, insurance swindler, and loose ethically today. Issa and his brother were charged with stealing a car in the 70s, though prosecutors dropped the charges. I mean, isn't that a little surreal, that back and forth?
It is. Surreal is the right word for it. I mean, the idea that the guy who's run the presidential campaigns is taking shots based on something that may or may not have happened 4 decades ago as a way to defend what the IRS, which they say they had nothing to do with, defend what the IRS is supposed to have done, is totally crazy. And it certainly doesn't exude much confidence, I would say, on behalf of the president and his advisors.
Mark.
That was a good reason not to use Twitter, if you ask me. On the other hand, calling Jay Carney a paid liar, I also think was inappropriate. You know what? Darrell Issa has a big media investigation. Let the facts speak for themselves. I don't think calling Jay Carney a paid liar, which, you know, he gives the information that he's given or that he has at the time. I mean, I just think that stuff is just unnecessary. And the Plouffe tweet was also unnecessary. I mean, I think this is why people look at Washington and they go, yuck.
I think there's a consensus there. Charles?
I would agree. I think that Issa should not be making personal attacks or hurling epithets. Leave that to me. And to Steve. Mara, I'm afraid, won't participate. But Steve and I will take care of it. And I think he's wrong about saying that Carney's a paid liar. I've argued here for months that Carney is majorly underpaid, and I think that really is the problem.
A poorly paid liar.
Poorly. Next up.